about the importance of the web technologies and how it is useful in our day-to-day lives, and the different types of web apps we have, like a browser-enabled web application as well as a desktop-enabled web application, and the mobile application types. And we have also they have provided its services to the educational institutions as well. So next, coming to this NSFNet, later this NSFNet has emerged into a total internet with some of the features like taken back from the ARPANET and the BitNet and CSNet. And after this NSFNet has come up, the ARPANET has totally it has been deprecated. So going to the next slide, what is meant by internet? So all of you are well aware, like it's a network of connected computers, so where we can transfer our data using some protocols like TCP or IP, transmission control protocol and internet protocol. And this particular internet protocol address, it's a 32-bit number separated by the periods, and there is a new standard coming here like IPv6, which has 128 bits. So like as discussed here, organizations are assigned group of IPs for the computers. So like for one organization, we have a large number of computers. For each computer or some set of like for each computer, we will have a unique IP address. So these have been assigned. So later, along with this TCP IP, we have got Telnet, FTP, different kinds of protocols. Now coming to the internet protocols domain names, as we have discussed yesterday, this particular domain name, we call it as a .com or .org or .edu, depending upon the organizations or education institutions or a commercial or a companies. So host name is like a, for example, we take as a Flipkart or Snapdeal or TCS. So this is a kind of a host name, which host name and domain name is separated by a period or a dot. So if we call a fully qualified domain name, it has to be represented like this: https://www.somex.com or flipkart.com kind of. So whenever you make any request through your browser, so that particular request has to be received by the server from the other end. So these kind of servers, we call them as a domain name service. And whenever you make a request, that is which is in a text format, like https://www.somex.com. So it will be converted to the respective numbers, which we call them as an IP, and the particular response can be retrieved from the backend. So this we are aware of, like client and server, which server continuously runs in the background. So whenever it gets a request, it will respond. So this slide also speaks about how the information transfer will be done. Okay. So World Wide Web, and this particular World Wide Web terminology, or it has been brought up by the Tim Berners-Lee at CERN, which is an European Physics Center, and because they want to transfer some program files, like the group of scientists want to share their information among themselves. So with that basic idea, they have come up with this World Wide Web, and we call the documents which we transfer, we call them as the documents on the web. And hypertext is nothing but a group of links which has some navigations and all. And hypermedia, along with the text, you can transfer some media files like images, sound, kind of things. So this slide we have discussed like what is the difference between a web and an internet. So web is nothing but a set of software or tools, and it will enable the document sharing with the help of the internet. So this internet has some set of protocols through which that particular machine can handle multiple sites. Sites in sense, for example, a single server can, on top of a single server, we can host multiple sites. Like, for example, we have this TCS.com consultancy services, and we have some other organization like Jaguar.com. So these two different sites can be hosted on a single server, and the operations can be asynchronous, and there is no need for like if one operation is going on, if you are trying to retrieve some information, the other operation cannot be like, it cannot be on hold. They can run asynchronously, or I mean parallelly. We can run the operations and retrieve the information. So all this communication between the browsers and servers, they will use the hypertext transfer protocol. Now moving on to the web server operations, I would like to share one Word document. So as discussed, this particular thing, server runs as a background. So the different organizations from which this concept has come up, and they all this communication runs through the HTTP. Okay. Here in this Word document, you can find a document root, a server root, and the web server. So this particular web server has the document root as a one child and server root as the other child. So whenever you make any request like http petunias.com/petunias.html. So you need one particular HTML from this particular site. So this is the address that you are going to hit in your web browser. So web browser is nothing but your Firefox or Chrome. So when you hit this particular link, what will happen in the background that we are going to understand. So this particular petunias.html is stored in this path like admin, web, top docs. So this is a path which will not be visible to the end user. Like you are the end user and you will just hit the HTML and you are not concerned about where it is actually stored in the web server. So what happens here in the document root, you will have all the admin / all the nested folders you will have. So this is a kind of navigation which will not be like visible to the end user where the actual document is present. Okay. This if the documents are present in the document root, inside the subfolders you will have your HTML. If the space is completely utilized, like document root is full, then it will store the files in the virtual document tree. It's a kind of virtual, it's like a kind of secondary disk, you can call it as. Okay. Now let us go back to the PPT. Document root, whenever it is like completely occupied by some other documents, whenever the directory is full, it will switch to the respective virtual document trees. And the server root, it will also have some set of documents. So document root is accessed indirectly by the clients. It means like the user will not know the path, as I mentioned. User will only be able to access the HTML files. So its actual location is set by the server configuration file. So this particular server configuration file will actually take care of the accessing the files and all. So requests are mapped to the actual location. So what is the actual location? The end file .html. So it will be concentrating more on the end path, but it will not reveal the other thing. So all these sentences are like telling the same thing. So let us come to the virtual host. So virtual host, I'm just switching back to my Word document. More than one site on a computer, so potentially reducing the cost of each site. For example, if you are dedicating one single server to a one site and another single server to another site, it's pretty costly. So what generally the organizations will do is like on a single server, you'll have a multiple sites hosted on it, so that it will reduce your maintenance, your cost, and it will be like more convenient. So those particular secondary hosts, we call them as a virtual host. So I want to repeat it again. So early servers provided some few services other than the basic process of returning requested files or the output of the programs whose execution has been requested. So the list of additional services has grown steadily over the years, and now many servers can support more than one site on a computer. So potentially reducing the cost of each site and making their maintenance more convenient. So on a single server, you can find the multiple links like Flipkart.com, Snapdeal.com, all together are hosting on a single server. Hosting is nothing but you are when you want to have some link, it has to be placed on some server, right? So the path, like it's like a home on which all the sites resides. So the second, we call them as a virtual host. So the next concept we are going to discuss is the this is nothing but you have some servers like server 1 and server 2. So your server 1 has some documents and server 2 has some documents. And if you want to, like some servers can serve documents that are in the document root of other machines. So if you have some other machines, there is the server 2 has some different document root, and if this particular server want to access the server 1 want to access the server 2 document root, then it can do such operations. In this case, we call them as a proxy servers. So one server is trying to access the documents of the other server document root. Document root is nothing but its child or a location. Okay. So I'll be sharing the PPT again. The placed in the document root or the server root. So depending upon the type of documents, and if you want to, if the document root is completely occupied, as if the directory is full, then it will look for a secondary disk, which is nothing but your virtual document trees, and the document root is accessed indirectly by the clients, which means you have a URL which you want to retrieve some x.html. So in your URL, you just give your host.domain name / that particular HTML file. And if you want, the particular end user will not be able to see the nested folders inside the document root or the server root, but only it will be concentrating on the end file. So that particular file will be displayed to the end user. So the requests are mapped to the actual location. Now coming to the virtual host. Virtual hosts are nothing but you have for example, you have multiple sites which are hosted on a single server. So this for example, you have one site which is hosting on one server, other site which is utilizing the same server. In that case, it will be like a virtual host for the other site. Proxies, you have a multiple servers, server 1 and server 2. If you want to access the documents of the other server, like server 2 documents you want to access from the server 1, that can be done. Like server 2 documents you want to access from the server 1, that can be done, which we call them as a proxy servers. That we have this Apache. Apache is a web server which is very well known. I hope like most of you have heard of it. It's an open source and fast and reliable. Open source in sense it is not licensed. It is open and it is available for the free download. So it has some different operations like server name, server root, server admin, document root. So these are kind of different operations which are involved in the Apache. So here I want to like elevate one thing. We have here front end and back end, right? So in the front end, we are dealing with the technologies like HTML, CSS, JavaScript. In the back end, we look for the different servers, PHP or a different kind of Java or some kind of backend. So this Apache server operations will come under a backend. So both together, we can have an end-to-end application. We should have a front end as well as we should have a backend. So this PPT mainly talks about the basics of everything, even from the internet, emerging of internet, the World Wide Web, the front end, and so if you, in your future, if you want to choose your career in a front end, then look into more of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and the different JavaScript frameworks like AngularJS, which is now most popular in this current market, and AngularJS, Backbone.js, React.js, and these are kind of different frameworks in the front-end side. So when you go for or you choose some back-end, like you want to become a middleware developer or who write different services, who who enables this document to the front-end team. So then you'll become some like back-end developer, Java developer kind of. So you have different streams to select here. You can be a front-end developer or a mobile, that means a web developer or a mobile app developer, and you can become a middleware developer. So the main intention of this presentation is like you just get to know all the basics. Then in future, if like based on your career path, you can choose different streams. We have multiple streams, not only the web technologies. We have some big data, Hadoop in the market. So it depends. Like it's important that basics of each and every technology, so that in future you can decide upon which career you want to choose and kind of your interest. So it's necessary that you have to go through like whatever I tell, just get back to your home and like revise everything. You can watch multiple tutorials on YouTube. So you can just Google it for more information apart from these classes if you're more interested. Okay. So this Apache is a kind of server and it has different operations. Okay. Next, IIS is nothing but it is also a server. When you install this Windows operating system, it will come as inbuilt. So IIS is an inbuilt server which you will get it. So this server operations is also like it will enable us to provide different documents and all. So operation is maintained through a program with a GUI interface. GUI is nothing but a graphical user interface. So we are discussing that user interface. So when we are adding graphics, we are like having this as a graphical user interface, like kind of components like sliding. You can have different graphics on your web page. So IIS is also a similar web server. So now going to this URLs. URLs, the full form is like Uniform Resource Locators. So generally, if you want to ask something to a friend or a lecturer, what you will do, just please provide me the URL so that I can go through. You'll be asking like that. So what is meant by an URL? URL is nothing but a universal or a resource locator. It helps us to identify the documents on the internet. So if you want to like know some information on the internet, then what do you generally do? You will browse it, right? So you'll able to find some. You'll filter for some documents. You'll identify those documents on the internet. So which will be enabled only with the help of some address or some link, which we call them as a URLs. So URL have some like general format, :object address. Like you type like https :www.somethingxyz.com. So this is object address on the right hand side, and this key we use the protocols and all kind of HTTP, FTP, COSPER, Telnet. So these are the different kinds of protocols we use. Again, here you have to remember fully qualified domain name / path of the document. Fully qualified, as we have seen in the Word document, we can see a complete URL.com / some xyz.html. So the format should be like this. And here we will be using again the HTTP protocol, HTTP, which supports the web. And you'll be this hypertext markup language HTML documents you can see. If you use any, like there is another scheme of interest, which is nothing but the file. Okay. Here we discussed a few things. Scheme of interest is, to us is the file, and the file protocol means that the document resides on the machine running the browser. So it's not present on the server, it is like residing on the same machine itself, and this approach is useful for testing our documents to be made available on the web. So without making them visible to any other browser. So we're just accessing the local files kind of thing. So for this, the format will be, I'll just type on the Word document. as https sometunings.com /some xyz.html. This is your fully qualified domain name, and this is your path name. Okay, and because of like we can see the fully qualified path address. So I would like to type a few more examples here. This is some kind of random text. Please ignore. So here you have two URLs, right? /departments/.com. So if you type http://www.gumboko.com/ then what it will do is like for every website there will be index.html. So if you do not specify anything after this, like kind of .html, if you don't specify which page you want to navigate, if you give only the slash, then it will go to the root of the that particular website, which is nothing but the index.html. So whenever you build any application, we have to start our web page. We have to start a website with one initial page, right, which we call them as this index.html. We often use this word like index.html for the root page. So when you give slash, then it will like go to the index.html. If you give -departments, which is a folder under the particular sites, in that department, what will be the root file? It will go to the particular file. So the path should be like authenticated. Like you should be careful while giving the path, because some paths may lead to an errors. So it depends again on how you retrieve the documents. Let me go back to the PPT. Of other special characters. So URLs, it should have some specific representation, like it should contain https://. It's not like double colon. Whatever the format it is given, we should strictly follow that particular format. And the doc path may be abbreviated as a partial path. So partial path is nothing but, as I showed in the Word document, right, /departments. So that is a partial path. So if you give the complete path .html, then it will navigate to the particular page. Otherwise, if you leave it by slash, if the doc path ends with a slash, it means it's a directory. So in that particular directory, it will go to the index.html, which is a root. Now going to the multi-purpose internet mail extension, MIME. Originally developed for email. So the main purpose of this MIME is like it is developed for the email communications, and it is used to specify to the browser the form of a file written by the server. So if the server is returning some documents, we will try to ensure like what kind of file it is. It can be a plain file, it can be HTML, it can be image, it can be a video. So this kind of different files, type specifications, we call them as we will represent them with the help of this MIME. So you can see here type specifications, form type / subtypes. So these are the examples of these are the different types of document types we can see. So the most common MIME type are the text, image and video. So these three things are the most common thing, and the most common next subtypes are like plain or HTML, and some common image subtypes are GIF and JPG. You can retrieve the images as well. So some common video types are like MVG and QuickTime. So a list of MIME specifications is stored in the configuration file of every web server. So every web server will have this configuration file, and this MIME actually is stored in the MIME specifications are stored in the configuration files of the web server. So it can be like text/HTML. So as represented here, we can see that extensions. So whenever you start writing an HTML, right? For example, you keep some abc.html, which tells the server that it should attach text/HTML to the document before sending it to the requested browser. So you have different extensions. Whenever you are writing any files, like you are writing any style sheet, cascading style sheet, which is nothing but a CSS. Going forward, we'll see how we develop a CSS file in HTML. It will have those extensions. Okay. Now just moving on to the next slide. So this topic we have discussed, like server gets the type from the requested name suffix .html. So it implies like it is a text/HTML, and browser gets the type explicitly from the server. Explicitly means whenever we are saving the file and hosting it on the server, we are saving it in the form of a .html or .css. So obviously the configuration will have the type of the files, and the browser gets the type from the server. Now moving on to this experimental doc types. These experimental subtypes are sometimes used, it is not often used. The name of the experimental subtype begins with like X hyphen. Okay, as like you can see the video / X hyphen MSV video. So any web provider can add an experimental subtype by having its name added to the list of the MIME specification. So the list of MIME specification is stored in the configuration file. I mean like a web provider server, right? So this web provider can add an experimental subtype as well. For example, a web provider might have a handcrafted database whose contents he or she wants to make available to the others through web. So what it means, like if you want to like have a particular contents available through the web, this particular web provider will ensure it, providing, and then that particular web provider must supply a program that the browser can call when it needs to display the contents of the database. So whenever a browser wants to display any contents of the database, it can use this particular format and retrieve it. So these are very less utilized here. So every browser, it will have a like set of MIME specifications. It can like all can deal with text/plain. Unformatted text will use it as a text/plain, and all the HTML files text/HTML. So which are saved again in the configuration files of the web server. So the last point is talking about the experimental types require the server to send a helper application or a plugin so that the browser can deal with a particular file. So whenever you specify these formats, plugin is nothing but a kind of extra extension kind of thing which helps the browser to deal with that particular kind of file. I would like to understand whether you are getting the things, or do anyone have some questions? By the browsers. So the server is actually helping out the browser in providing the extensions like text/HTML. In the similar way, if you want the databases help the browsers, they are utilizing this particular experimental types as a medium or a plugin to enable the browser to display that particular file from the database. Okay, here we have two things, from the database and from the server. Okay, So the database extensions are like video slash x hyphen ms video experimental types thing, and the others are like text slash html. So you don't need to worry about you have to write some text slash html. It will be handled by the configuration files. Okay. The main thing you have to save your files is with the proper extension. Okay. Okay. The request phase and the response phase will have two things actually. Whenever we request for an information, like we have to pass certain parameters, and whenever you need any response also we need to pass some certain parameters. I mean, like requesting, and whenever you are receiving you will get some data with the header information and all. So that we will get to know here. So in the request phase, we will have the HTTP method domain part of the URL HTTP version. So if you can see here down, get slash degrees.html HTTP slash 1.1. So this is actually the first line of a request. So here you are trying to get the HTML page using the particular version of the HTTP. So here we have the header fields, blank line and a message body. So this is the first line. So like going forward we will see the other lines and understand. Okay. So these are the different methods which help in the execution. Like for example, you want to fetch a document, then you have to write this particular get method. And if you want to post anything to the server, if you want to pass some parameters to the server, and based on those parameters, only if you want to retrieve the information. For example, you can use a username and password, like you can post those two things and you can successfully log into the application and get the data. Okay. And head, fetch just the header of the document, what kind of file it is, whether it is a HTML file or kind of documents, we can have it using this particular header. And put store a new document on the server. If you want to store a new document, you can use this command. And delete, you can remove a document from the server. But most frequently we will be using only the get and post methods. The remaining three things will be done very rarely. Okay. So whenever you are trying to, you have a HTML page. Okay. You want to retrieve some information. You will be using some Ajax method. In the Ajax method, you will you will actually write the type of the method, like whether it can be a get request or a post request. Okay. Get, we won't pass any parameters. Post, we will pass the parameters. Okay. So the most frequently used methods are get and post here. So we can, using this post, we are actually originally, this post was designed for the tasks such as posting some news articles and parameters. So its most common use now is to send form data from the browser to the server. Okay. Whenever you want to submit any form, right? So you want to send all the form details like your name, so that it will be saved in the respective database. So from the server it will again go to the database and it will reside in that particular database. Along with the request to execute a program on the server that will process the data. Okay. This particular thing, server will process your data. It will help. It will help to receive all the information from the web page. Especially forms, you can notice this thing. Okay. Let us move to the next slide. So we are just trying to understand the HTTP headers. 4 categories of the header fields: general, request, response and entity. So I shall write few things on your Word document. I'm now sharing the Word document to you.
sir.
And write like accent colon slash be a HTML or a plain. So this is like a format. So here we can see the four things, four categories of the header file: general, request, response, and entity. Okay. So for general information such as date and all, in the header we can use this particular keyword. So if you want to include in the request headers, you can use the keyword request. For response headers, you will be using the response. And for entities, like using both request and response header. For each of this, we can understand using the examples. So one common request field is like accept field, so which specifies a preference of the browser for the MIME type. So this particular MIME type we have already discussed, right? It resides in the configuration file to understand like what kind of file the server has. So the format is like you can specify like accept colon text slash plain. So this is one of the common request field. So generally you can see like for dates we will utilize. For request, we will write this kind of thing like accept colon text slash plain. So this is an example for the request. So how do you request actually? So whether it is a plain or HTML, it can be a GIF and all. So in this Word document, if you can see here, accept colon text slash star, which means like we are actually specifying like this is a text, but it can be like a wildcard character. We call it a star as a wildcard character. Can be used to specify that part of the MIME type can be anything. So under the text it can be either a plain or HTML. We are not specifying what is a particular type, but we are just giving like it's a text slash star, which it can take any of the things like plain or HTML or GIF. And there is also other format like host colon host name request field that I'll show you. So this is again another request type. So accept is one request type here. So this request type, one format is accept, other is a host. So here we have host colon host name request field, which gives the name of the host. It gives you like what is the name of the host. For example, I am using some laptop. When you go to your command prompt and you type a host name, you will get the host name of your computer. Like my host name is like 01HW. I have some host name defined by my IT team. So that particular host name it will give. The host field is required for the HTTP. Like HTTP is specifying like version 1.1 as per your textbooks. And this we can also write as IF modified since I will also specify the date request field here. Example for date is hyphen modified. You can also write here. Specify the date here. So say another request field specifies the requested file should be sent only if it has been modified since the given date. This kind of a condition, okay? If the request has a body, I mean if you have more details on your request, the length of that body must be given with a content length field. I am going to share you the PPT once again. The common response fields content length 488, content type text slash HTML. So this specifies like if your request has some body, it has to specify the content length field, which gives the length of the response body in bytes. Okay. Post with servers require this field because they send the data to the server. So whenever you are filling any form and if you want to submit on the form, then a post request go to the server, right? In that case, you have to this particular request requires the length, total content length and all. So the data of a request must be followed by the blank line, which is used to separate the header from the body of the request. So the particular request, requests that use the get, head and delete methods, actually they do not have bodies. Okay, get, head and delete, these three things will not have the bodies. This particular post will have a body. Okay, so because we are passing some parameters, it will have some content length and it will have some details. Okay. There is one more command here. So a browser is not necessary to communicate with a web server. So whenever you are making any request, in some cases we may not communicate with the web server. So in that case, actually we have a command called as a telnet. It can be used instead. The command is like in the PPT you can see the telnet and some web address and through the protocol HTTP. So considering the following command actually given in the command line of any widely used operating system. So this command actually creates a connection to the HTTP port on this particular website, like blank, whatever it is written here, right? blanca.uccs.edu. Okay. This thing, it will establish, this command creates a connection to the HTTP port on this particular domain server, and the server responds with the following. Whatever you are seeing, right, the particular server will respond with this particular command. So you will get a response. I will show you the two commands. This response phase will have a status line response header. As we have seen in the HTTP request, in the response phase also we have this particular form, status line, response header fields, blank line and a response body. Okay. Previously you have seen the request header, request body. So here you will see the response header and the response body. And the status line format will be like syntax here, HTTP version, the status code and the explanation. So here status code, we have different types of status codes here. So under this protocol we have 200, which is nothing but okay. When your connection is successful, then you can see like the status code is 200. Okay, and the current version you are specifying HTTP under 1.1. So these are the different kinds of status codes we have. It's a 3-digit number and the first digit specifies the general status. So 1 means informational, 2 means success, what kind of response it is, kind of. 3 is the redirection, 4 is the client error and 5 is the server error. Mostly you can see the 500 error, like internal server error, when you are not able to navigate to some particular pages. So 200 is a success state. Kind of content you are like accessing is also required. So this is one of the examples for the HTTP response example. So from a server end, how the response will be like, it will show you. So this is something like when you see your web page, it is all like a kind of formatted thing which can be easily understood, but these server concepts are a bit tricky and you have to just like used to, you have to like go through each and every concept once again, okay, so that you can understand well. This HTTP/1.1 200, okay, this is your success state and this date is the specified date. This type of server we have, last modified, we have discussed. this has been last modified, and you have certain tags like connection, content length, so how many bytes, cache set. So these all parameters goes into the response. Okay, both the request headers and response headers